And what happened was he was harvesting olives on his land. He was sitting on his knees, and then he was attacked by a settler from behind. He was attacked with an iron bended pipe, which at the outside was as sharp as a knife. And
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. As we record on 11/11, the question is whether activist Alaa Abd El-Fattah is still alive. He's been on a total hunger strike and over the last 6 days hasn't even touched water. His lawyer has not been able to see him, so no one knows if he's suffering, if he's being force-fed in prison, or if he's already died and dictator el-Sisi is just withholding the news until the luminaries at the climate conference have gone home. Supposedly, President Biden will speak about it today. But will he demand action? Will he say, either let out the political prisoners in Egypt or kiss your $2 billion a year subsidy from the U.S. goodbye? Here's a one-person vigil in front of the Egyptian embassy in Washington. Wafa al-Mustafa, whose father disappeared into Assad's dungeons 9 years ago, says the effort for Allah makes her suffering a little less lonely. In Hartford, Connecticut, on the 7th, we held a vigil.
Alaa Abd El-Fattah has been on a hunger strike and for many months subsisting only on tea, honey and water. Today he started a total fast, denying water only, and this may be my only opportunity now to petition the U.S. government, all governments, to do what they can for him to be freed and for all Egyptian political prisoners to be freed.
I'm here because there's human rights violations is continuing in Egypt in terms of political prisoners. Abd El-Fattah is the most recent one that we're seeing, and the rights of Egyptians across the country have been limited.
I think that it's time that Egypt frees its political prisoners. This is something that has been overlooked by this country, but I think that the political prisoners in Egypt, need to be freed, and they don't need to have their basic rights taken away because someone else is afraid of what they might say or what they might do. So that's why I'm out here today.
So far, el-Sisi is unbending. In fact, Alaa's sister, Sanaa Saif, is in danger of arrest herself. A lickspittle Egyptian lawyer has filed a complaint against her for spreading lies and incitement during her address to the climate conference at Sharm el-Sheikh. In northern Syria, it appears that Turkish pressure has forced the HTS, which used to call itself Al-Qaeda, out of the city of Afrin. now from the Tree of Life program about Hebron in Palestine. The speaker will be Mella. She is a student, a blogger, and a beginning journalist. This year she will complete the final year of a research master's program in philosophy at the University of Amsterdam.
What are you doing here? We know you always enter from the other side. Why are you here? An Israeli soldier asked my Palestinian friend when we entered the checkpoint to that part of Hebron that's under Israeli military control, direct Israeli military control, because the rest of Hebron H1 is also under Israeli control, but this one direct Israeli control. My friend didn't have to show his Palestinian identity card because the cameras already recognized his face and showed to the soldiers his security rating, his family history, and his security rating, family history, and history of movement. And such cameras with facial recognition are already banned in a number of US states. The EU calls for its prohibition, and Israel's Supreme Court prohibited them from appearing in Israeli public space. So it's clear that Israel, the United States of America, and Europe do value the privacy and autonomy of their own citizens, but not that of the Palestinians. You cannot go back to the Arab part, you are a Jew. An Israeli soldier said to my American Jewish friend who came to visit me during my time in Hebron. Although he had arrived by Palestinian bus to the Palestinian side of Hebron, he wasn't allowed to go back there, as if, being a Jew, he would be immediately eaten alive by Palestinians. So he had to take the settler bus back to Jerusalem, and I had to walk home alone. So, do you have Muslims amongst you? They are not allowed to go further, this Israeli soldier said to our group when we were having a tour in the old city of Hebron. So the Palestinians and Muslims amongst us had to return back, and the rest of us, the Europeans, Americans, they could go on. And this is Shohada Street, which you've been told about, maybe many of you have seen it already, where Palestinians cannot walk. The Netherlands, beautiful country, have a great day, the soldiers would always say to me when I showed my passport. And in Hebron, you become accustomed to showing your passport and telling them your religion. And it was the first time that I really felt that it's not because I'm a human being that I've granted human rights, but it's because I have a Dutch passport and the absence of any contested religion. For Palestinians, having a Palestinian passport means the very opposite of being granted human rights, because for the sole fact of being a Palestinian, they're only allowed to move within restricted areas. Their every move is watched by cameras. They face checkpoints in every direction they go, and there they may face humiliation or worse. Only this year, 120 Palestinians have been killed within the West Bank in confrontations with Israeli soldiers and Palestinians, and among them were 28 children. It's impossible for me to lay down all the human rights violations that the Palestinians are subject to, but here I will tell some of the things I have witnessed during my 3 months in Hebron, which Rufan already mentioned 3 times. So, yeah, so I've been 3 months in Hebron, and one of those 3 months I lived in H2, in the area that you've been told about, and there I tried to gather as much information and stories as possible about settler violence, and that's where I wrote the article on. For those who haven't visited Hebron, I wanted to show also how beautiful the city is, especially not only, but also the skies. Like almost every evening, the skies are so beautiful there. This is the oldest cafe in Hebron. But, and here you see goats at a checkpoint. They don't care. But even the most ignorant tourists cannot deny that the occupation has settled in the heart of this old city, because if you look above your head, you see nets spread above the streets. And these nets, they protect everyone who is crossing these streets on the way to their mosques, or the customers of shops, or the shop owners. And what do they protect them from? From everything that the settlers, who often live on the first floor of buildings in the old city, throw down. And that can be sticks, stones, broken bottles, broken chairs, as you see here. And shop owners complain about all the harassment they face by settlers. And for example, one shop owner that I befriended, Badr Tamimi, he showed me many videos of settlers So his shop is here on the left side. And on the right side, there is the entrance to a settlement, Beit Hadassah settlement, which also leads to Shohada Street. And he showed me many videos of settlers attacking his shop, throwing stones at his shop, breaking the pottery that's on display. Here you see settlers on a video, and this is also settlers in front of his shop. Here we see a settler with a gun. And every time when settlers start throwing usually stones at his shop, the soldiers who are right in front of his shop, they oversee everything. They either do nothing or they start shooting tear gas and sound bombs at his shop to force him to close his shop. And here he shows the canisters that's been thrown at or shot at his shop. And here we see broken pottery. So it's clear that soldiers, they allow settlers to do their harassment, and they usually do not interfere. And also all the Palestinian families that live next to settlements and settlers, they usually tell the same story, more or less the same story, that on Saturdays and on Jewish holidays, settlers would start attacking their Palestinian neighbors, either by throwing things at them, damaging their cars, damaging their windows, swearing at them. Mahmoud, for example, a woman I met, she's a mother of 3 sons, and she had to repair her windows 3 times in the last 2 years because they were demolished by settlers. And sometimes the settlers would throw rotten food at her and her family and call them dirty Arabs. And she also told me about an incident. This family, they cannot enter their own roof anymore because they used to have a Palestinian flag on their roof. And then there was an incident where a settler climbed their roof and tried, or did it, I'm not sure, take the Palestinian flag down. And then one of the family members pushed the settler away. Nobody got hurt, but for the Israeli soldiers, this was the moment to forbid them entry into their own roof. And this is so telling for me because this is a national symbol of the Palestinians on the little piece of land they are still left with, and even there, they're not allowed to raise their own flag, while everywhere in the old city you would see Israeli flags. And I think it shows that Israel, while it already took 78% of land from the Palestinians, making 750,000 Palestinians into refugees and demolishing more than 400 villages, but they do not stop, and they seem to want the rest to colonize the rest also and make Palestinians sick of living on their own land. In the last weeks, after I left Hebron, I heard that my friend's shop, Better Shop, was set on fire. And in this part of Hebron, the Palestinian police is not allowed to enter because it's under the direct control of the Israeli military. So there's no official investigation. But I think for most of us, it's clear who must be behind it. This is another shop owner who arbitrarily has to close his shop. He's on the border between the Jewish side of the Ibrahimi Mosque and the Palestinian side of it, and they often have to close their shops for no particular reason. Also, in one of the last weeks I was in Hebron, settlers took over this house at the end of Shohada Street, and it's a Palestinian-owned house, and they raised their flags, of course, many flags, and they were constantly guarded by 30 or more soldiers, and the settlers would just talk with the soldiers and give them ice cream, while at the end of the road there is a checkpoint where Palestinians are being harassed, and soldiers have, by international law, the duty to protect the Palestinians because they illegally occupy their land, and instead they side with the settlers and let them do what they want to do. Once I was, this is Shohada Street again, and here we see a settler talking with a soldier at the checkpoint. Once we were having a tour in the old city, and we were supposed to go to a man who lives, his family's land lies in between 2 settlements, the 2 settlements of Hebron, Kiryat Arba and Givat Havot. But we didn't go because the day before, on the 17th of June, he was attacked by settlers. And a week later, I went with my tour guide, my friend, we went to visit him. There's a lot of photos. These are settlers. This is the man, Abdul Karim al-Ja'bari. He's 64 years old, and we found him with his head covered in cast and his arm covered in cast. So his family's land lies in between two settlements, and there is also a tent on his land, on his family's land, which functions as a synagogue. And this tent has been declared illegal by Israel's Supreme Court in 2015 because it's on Palestinian land. But still, the soldiers allow settlers to use it and do their religious prayers there. And so on Saturdays, there would come dozens of settlers on his land to this tent, and on Jewish holidays, the numbers would rise to hundreds. And the United Nations documented multiple settler attacks on al-Ja'bari's family, ranging from shooting, throwing stones, breaking into their homes, damaging their home, stealing livestock, and stealing crops. And according to the family, all 7 sons and 3 daughters have been hospitalized due to settler attacks, and this man was the last one. And what happened was he was harvesting olives on his land. He was sitting on his knees, and then he was attacked by a settler from behind. He was attacked with an iron bended pipe, which at the outside was as sharp as a knife, and he was cut 3 times in his head. Here we see the man who he was attacked. At some point during the attack, he turned around and he wanted to defend himself against a rock that the settler threw at him, and he also broke his arm. And at some point, the settler, as well as all the other settlers who had been watching the scene, not actively participating, but watching the scene, ran away. And Abu Anan is his nickname. He ran towards the soldiers, and I will not let you look too long at these gruesome pictures. He ran to the soldiers and asked them for help. And when an Israeli ambulance entered the scene, so did an infamous settler, Ofer Hannah, and he's very famous in a negative way among Palestinians living in Hebron because he is behind multiple attacks on Palestinians. And he prevented anyone on the scene to prevent first aid to Abu Anan. At last, fortunately, the Palestinian Red Crescent arrived and took the man away. And at some point, 2 days later, Abu Anan was asked to file a complaint at the Israeli police station. And the Israeli police already had assembled the settlers who were likely involved because they have cameras everywhere. So they assembled these people, and Abu Anan described exactly who did what, who was present. And among those who were present were also 3 sons of Itamar Ben-Gvir, which is an Israeli lawyer and member of the Israeli parliament. The Israeli police made clear to Abu Anan that they believed his story, and they said these settlers should be punished for their crimes. And yet, the next day, after spending 1 night in jail, all the settlers were released without charges. According to Israeli human rights organization Yesh Din, 90% of settler violence goes unpunished. And when I was hearing all these stories, you wonder how is it possible for Palestinians to stay sane, especially for the youth. And the youth are the ones who also let themselves be heard sometimes, or not sometimes, like quite regularly on Fridays, at the outside of Bab Zawiya checkpoint, which leads to that part of Hebron that's under direct Israeli occupation. And this scene is a very bizarre scene, because you would see boys from 15, 16-year-old with T-shirts throwing stones at soldiers who, as you know, have every thinkable and unthinkable weapon at their disposal. But I would always understand them when I saw them, because no young person with dreams would go down without a fight. Palestinians are trapped, and all my Palestinian friends express this in different ways. Many of them mentioned the ocean. 71% of the world is covered in ocean, and yet Palestinians don't have access to it. And if Palestinians want to go out of the West Bank, as you know, they need a permit, and this permit system is totally untransparent. It's not clear who will get a permit and why, and if it's denied, why it is denied. And many people don't even get the permit. And then there is another thing which Palestinians stumble upon if they want to leave the West Bank, which is this wall, which you may or may not have seen. This is a 12-meter high concrete wall. I come from the Netherlands. I have visited Berlin. Many of you may have seen the remnants of the wall we once had in Europe. And this wall in Europe we now call the wall of shame. And I wonder, how long are we going to have double standards? I wanted to describe to you one last scene, which was when I was eating pizza with a friend on a sidewalk in the new city of Hebron, the new center. And he showed me the map of Palestine that I think all of us know, that you see in 1946, most of historic Palestine still belonged to the Palestinians, and by now they barely have anything left. And he said to me, "You see this? Israel will not stop. In some years there will be no Palestine. We will not be here, remember me. Remember I said this. You will see, we will be gone." And my greatest wish is to prove him wrong.
At the very end of October, Hebron activist Issa Amro was told that his house was a closed military zone. His house.
2 days ago, the Israeli occupation and apartheid forces declared the house as a closed military zone. I am the only one who's allowed to be inside because I live here. So the community center of Yas is closed now. No visitors, no volunteers are allowed to come here. We were facing settler violence in the last 10 days. Me personally, I was attacked many times. Other international volunteers in the olive harvest campaign, other Yas activists were attacked. Even they stole the phone of one of the activists. They throw stones, they throw rubbish toward us. And when I went to the Israeli police to file a complaint, 3 times they refused to take it, and the punishment was from the Israeli occupation toward us to close the house, declare it as a closed military zone. The settlers, since very long time, they were trying to take over this house to connect the Israeli settlements in Hebron to each other. It's a kind of forced displacement and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. We in Yas, we are protecting the houses, we are helping the families to stay, so we are remaining, we will not give up, and we are ready to pay the price. We want you to help us to post the Palestinian voices and continue increasing awareness about the Israeli occupation and apartheid. And I want you to be creative to make the occupation costly for the occupiers. Without making the occupation costly for the occupier, nothing will change. And you saw the results of the Israeli election. The fascists now and the extremists are in the government, and that means that it's a duty of everybody on the world to work with us to change that and make Israel accountable for its occupation, for its apartheid, and for its fascism.
The next day they renewed the order.
הגדרות, בהכרזה הזאת, המפה נושאת את ההכרזה בדבר סגירת שטח מרחב תל רומיידה. We stay at מרחב תל רומיידה, where we stay now. לא ייכנס לשטח הסגור ולא ישהה בו. No one stay and no one comes. Everyone they stay inside the שטח הסגור is immediately need to go away from here until we say another.
Hebron is in the south of the West Bank. Jenin is in the north. That's where the Israelis killed reporter Shireen Abu Akleh just 6 months ago. There's been no justice for the family of this Palestinian with American citizenship. The U.S. just continues to shovel the money and guns to Israel. Ukraine. Some excellent news. Putin's troops have left the city of Kherson, and Ukrainian soldiers are carefully entering. And some less good news. You recall that several months ago, Ukraine's ambassador to Israel expressed support for Israel's attack in August against the Gaza Strip. Now, Ukraine's President Zelensky has tweeted congratulations to Netanyahu after his election win, talking something about shared values between Ukraine and apartheid Israel. This as Netanyahu embraces the Kahanist, fascist, ultra-right. There were a lot of critical replies to Zelensky's tweet, including one from our account at Struggle Video. The best reply, however, came from Grannies for Equality, which I believe is made up of Syrians. They wrote, "The president of a country resisting brutal occupation, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing, seeking support as it does so, should not twin himself with a president who perpetuates brutal occupation, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing. Palestinian children bleed just like Ukrainian children." And Zelensky should ponder this huge banner that Netanyahu used last year in 2021 during his election campaign. Do remember, we can be in complete solidarity with Ukraine and still criticize its government. That's our program for today. See you next week. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.